All right, wonderful. I think we're going to go ahead and give everybody just a couple of minutes to join the webinar. We'll begin in just a few. Welcome everyone. It looks like we have a few folks who have joined us. Just trying to give people just a couple minutes to come in and get here. We know we know you all have busy evenings, so we'll give people a few minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. What do you think, Gordon? Another minute?
Sure, whatever. That sounds fine.
Okay. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started, and folks can trickle in when they do, but I just wanted to take a few minutes and welcome you. We're so glad that you're here joining us for this webinar, and I'd love to introduce myself and Gordon, but first I just wanted to let you know that we would love to hear from you in the chat. The way that this is going to work is we'll be sharing information, and Gordon has some really important tips for you and strategies for success here at LAPU. But we'd love to hear back from you as well. So you can feel free to use either the chat or the Q&A box to get in touch. And I'll make sure that, I gently interrupt Gordon and ask for an answer, or we chat you an answer to make sure you have everything you need. Our goal is really to be as helpful to you as we possibly can be. Your success Whatever that means for you here at LAPU is really, really important to us. And so if you have extra follow-up questions or if you're looking for a resource, I'd love to provide that for you in the chat. And it might really be something that other people are thinking about too. So definitely put it out there and we can try and get you what you need. With that being said, I'd love to introduce myself. My name is Kaylin Crawford, and I am a student success manager here at LAPU. That means I manage a team of success coaches. And so I'm sure you have heard from or spoken with your success coach here as a student. And that's the team that I work on. They're a wonderful group of people. Our students are a wonderful group of people. I really love working here at LAPU. And joining me is Gordon Jorgensen, and he is an assistant dean here at Los Angeles Pacific University. So he oversees academics. Do you want to talk a little bit about which of the courses you particularly work with, Gordon? Which of the subjects?
Sure. I generally oversee 3 degree programs. One of them is the Associate of Arts in Humanities. The other is a Bachelor's in Information Systems. And the third is a Bachelor's in Liberal Studies. And because of the Liberal Studies connection, I also manage a fair number of the General Studies courses on top of that.
Yeah.
And I also teach, typically the classes that I teach most frequently are the math courses in the Liberal Studies Bachelor's and the ISTU 101 course, which is typically one of the first courses that LAPU students take when they come with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So our hope is that between the two of us, we can answer all of your questions. Between Gordon teaching and managing and myself overseeing a lot of the resources and extras that are here at LAPU to serve you, we really feel like we have a strong grasp on what you might need to know, what you might want to consider as you look to your success, as you make plans for your success. Whether you're a newer student or a more seasoned student, there's always room to grow in the way that you're approaching your studies, in the way that you get everything out of it that you possibly can. We know that it is, it's an expensive endeavor, expensive in money and expensive in your time and energy. So we really want to make sure that you are getting the most out of it. If you don't mind though, I would love to start by opening us in prayer. So if you're comfortable with that, please join me and I'll pray for our time. Dear Heavenly Father, I'm so grateful, Lord, for all the ways that you provide for myself and for all the folks that are on this webinar, Lord. I just pray that you would direct our conversation so that it might be fruitful, that it might be informative and helpful for the students that are joining us. And I pray for your blessing over them in their educational journey. And in their classes, their current classes that they're in now, Lord, we pray for favor, and we pray that the energy and time that they spend in those classes would be multiplied so that they might have more than enough to do what they need to do. Please bless this conversation. And it's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah.
One of the things that I also wanted to remind everyone is that don't feel like you have to copy all these things down that you'll see in the slides. The entire presentation is being recorded, so you'll be able to have access to that later if you want to go back and look at something. Of course, you are welcome to take notes if you'd like to.
Perfect.
But I just wanted to say that the main goal for this time that we'll spend together this evening is to give you all some practical strategies that will make your lives easier as students here at LAPU. I'm hoping that whether you're just 4 weeks into your experience here with us, or 4 months, or even longer, that you've gotten the vibe that we care deeply for our students and helping them to succeed. We know that you're awfully busy. We know that many of you are working full time and have family responsibilities on top of trying to pursue your degree goals. So we try to provide as much support as we can. And this webinar is one of those pieces of support. So I wanted to talk first about time management strategies. Most all of us now are connected to this thing, right? And the amazing thing about our phones and our calendars, everything can be synced. And so I would suggest that if you're not already doing so, that you try to use some form of a calendar to help you plan. And the main reason for that is because I'm sure you're already aware that weeks move by quickly and assignments come upon you quickly. And sometimes the assignments are fairly large and they take a little bit more work than some other assignments. So that if you have a calendar, it'll help you better prepare yourself so that you don't have to get stuck procrastinating and getting stuck in the last minute doing an assignment. Um, of course, if you're one of those folks who likes to turn the pages, you can still use a good old-fashioned planner. I think the important thing is that you use some type of a calendar to help you plan and keep track of things, especially if you're enrolled in more than one course, because often different assignments have different due dates. And so being able to stay organized is super important when it comes to that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is kind of how to balance your planning. Each week you'll have assignments to read, you have discussion posts that need you to make an initial post on one day and a certain number of peer responses by another day. And then you'll most of the time each week have some kind of a writing assignment that's due. So I wanted to just say, to challenge you to try to do your reading early in the week and watching any lectures or any presentations that happen to go with the week's activities so that you're ready for the discussion. Because one of the things that I'm sure you've figured out by now is by doing the reading and watching the different types of videos and presentations, they help prepare you to better answer the discussion prompts. And then of course, you'll probably mostly spend your weekend time doing the writing assignments if you're like most of our students. You know, as I'm teaching classes, I kind of watch the inbox for assignment submissions. And I would say probably about 90% of all written assignments get submitted either Saturday or Sunday. So that's pretty typical. If that's kind of matches up with what's been happening with you so far, then I would try to follow this order as you plan out your week each week. The other thing I would say is to challenge yourself to create manageable goals and realize that life is going to happen along the way. We're very well aware that things pop up during the week that you had no expectation would happen. And so by having good time management strategies, you can create manageable goals to the point where if there's an assignment that maybe you can't give it your best 100% full energy, you can still give half of your energy and get it submitted and earn points versus not submitting the assignment at all and taking a 0 on an assignment. So try to create manageable goals for each week. You know, most of us are pretty familiar with life. We know what's coming most of the time. If we plan things out, usually we're fairly successful at getting to all the different things that come our way. But in the event that there are surprises, you want to be as prepared for those surprises as you can be. Lastly, I would start as early as you can on your assignments. If that means you're waiting until the weekend, I would strongly encourage you not to wait until Sunday evening. Most assignments are due on Monday morning at 8 o'clock. So you'll want to try to not get yourself boxed into situations where you're staying up on Sunday night until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning working on an assignment that's due that Monday morning. There's a chat there that asks if we're on mute.
Got it. Yeah,
Can you hear
I'm
me
chatting
fine?
Denise back, but you should be able to hear Gordon. Is anyone else having trouble with that?
Maybe she's got a speaker issue.
Yeah, maybe. I'll work with her in the chat on it.
The last thing I'll say about time management is sometimes it's good to have family and friend conversations to let everybody know, hey, I'm in school right now. And because I'm in school, that's taking up a good amount of my time each week so that people won't think, oh, well, you're just non-social anymore. Or you don't like us anymore, or you don't have time for me when it comes to our friends and family. When it comes to your immediate family, significant others, kids, it's also a good idea to have conversations with them so that they know that it's not a personal thing when you decide you have to work on schoolwork versus watch a movie on Netflix with them on a Saturday night or something like that. I think it's always good to let everybody know what's going on, just because that helps everyone be at ease when they understand, why isn't my dad here with us, or why isn't my mom here with us? What's going on? How come they're not around like they used to be? So I think it's always a good idea to have those kinds of conversations, even from time to time. I think, as busy as lives are, it could be that, maybe it's a good conversation to have every month or so, especially if you're a regular student and you keep going on and on session by session. Next thing I wanted to talk about is finding yourself a quality workspace. This can sometimes be a challenge, especially if you don't live in a gigantic house where you can go in a room all yourself and have quiet and be able to concentrate. But it's really good to make sure you find a place where you can be alone and concentrate and be free from the other distractions that are going on. Or somebody's watching TV in the same room with you, it's going to be hard to pay attention to what you're doing in school. The next thing is, make sure that you have good Wi-Fi. Most of the time that's a pretty easy thing to accomplish nowadays. Thank goodness all the Wi-Fi providers are really good. It's certainly better than it was 5 to 10 years ago when we started doing online classes and programs. But the other thing I would say too about Wi-Fi is make sure you have a backup plan. If the Wi-Fi goes out, I'm sure we all have had our situations where the Wi-Fi goes out for some unexplained reason, nothing works. So if that's a matter of using a hotspot on your phone, driving over to Starbucks or McDonald's, there's so many restaurants now that have good Wi-Fi. I myself, when Wi-Fi has gone out here at my house, have gone and just sat in the parking lot right next to the Starbucks that's close by, so I can have Wi-Fi but still have the quiet of the inside of my car to be in a meeting that I'm supposed to be in, things like that. Next, I would say make sure that you have a comfortable yet professional workspace. You probably don't want to be laying on the couch trying to do your schoolwork, or sitting in bed, even though you might be sitting up, because if you're like me, I'd be tempted to just kind of take a little rest, and I might not wake up from that rest.
Too
But
long of a nap.
yeah, no kidding. But try to make sure that it's comfortable and professional, so you're in a good space to be able to accomplish your work. Do your best to minimize the potential distractions. I think most of the time of my work time, when I'm here working from home alone, it happens to be a barking dog that I'm trying to control. Sometimes you don't know when somebody's going to knock at the door. I think the other thing too, as I think back in the past, is, my kids are all grown now, but back in the day when they were younger, it was tough to kind of minimize those distractions if I didn't have a good workspace. So now I want to shift gears and talk about the instructors of the classes that you're in, people like myself. I think one of the things that our students at LAPU don't take enough advantage of, and that is developing some relationships with their instructors. I have to let everybody know a secret. We are regular people just like you. And we have favorite sports teams, we have favorite hobbies that we like to do, we have fun things we like to do on the weekends, we have favorite restaurants we want to go to. Just because we're an instructor in one of your class doesn't mean that we're this weird name on the other side of a computer screen. So I want to challenge you to get to know your instructors a little bit. Send them an email that just says, hi, I hope you're having a good day. And you'd be surprised at how empowering that is for your relationship with your instructor. Especially if you need help with something, or especially if you get into a situation where something happens in life and you need some extra time on an assignment. Those kind of relationships are super important to try to establish. Um, I happen to be one of the types of instructors. In my welcome video in the class, I give my cell phone number. I welcome students to call or text me when they have questions or if they need help with an assignment. Most of our instructors are like that as well. We want to be accessible to you, and we also want to get to know you. And one of the other reasons why I want students that are in my liberal studies program to get to know me is the students in that particular program have a career goal of becoming teachers. And if they listen to my intro video, if they read my instructor bio, they'll learn that before I started working at the university level, I used to be a middle school teacher, an assistant principal, and a principal of a middle school at a pretty good sized suburban school district. And so I want to help them understand what professional life is going to look like once they graduate and start trying to find their first teaching jobs. I want to help them, with strategies like what to do when they fill out applications and what kind of questions they're going to be asked in interviews. And so things like that excite me. I love to help students like that. And that kind of help doesn't usually happen if a student isn't willing to get to know me a little and at least talk on the phone or text or email or something. So my encouragement is to try to get to know your instructors and also try to get to know your classmates. This is not very hard to do. You're all in the same discussion forums week after week after week. It's super easy to reach out to each other because I'm sure there are different assignments along the way where maybe you have a question and it's quicker and easier to ask one of your cohort members in a class. So I encourage you to develop relationships with them too, for all the same reasons. Make sure that you watch the welcome video and look at all the information in the professor corner of all of your classes. And always, when I say always, I literally mean always. Every time you log into your class, look in the upper right-hand corner and see if there are any new announcements. And I say this out of experience. You would be, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but I'm always surprised myself at how many times I put something in the announcements that's going to help students on an assignment that's due that week. And then all the assignments get turned in and I'm sitting at home grading assignments and it's as if they never saw the announcement. And so I'll even put sometimes in my comments in the grading rubric, did you see the announcement that I put at the beginning of the week? And sometimes I'll actually email them or text them, did you see the announcement? And so many times they tell me, no, I forgot to do that. So my challenge is to make sure that you check those announcements so that you can know everything that you can possibly know what's going on in your course. That last one, sending an introductory email or text, is something I already talked about earlier. Same thing with connecting with some of your classmates. Start talking too much. Do you have any questions so far?
No questions so far. It's really quiet. We did solve the sound issue for Denise though, so that's good news, but feel free to pop anything into the chat. Love to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to answer any kind of questions anyone has.
Yeah.
Reading strategies. One of the things that I know you're fully aware of now is there's a lot to read every week. And that's one of the realities of taking classes at the university level. That's one of the ways that you are able to take in new information and learn about different things, especially things that are connected to what's going on in the course assignments and what's going on with the course learning objectives. So I just say that so that we all just everybody recognizes the reality. There's a lot to read every single week. And so planning and making sure that you have time is pretty important. Um, One of the things that I also encourage, especially if you maybe aren't used to it or haven't done it much, is to use e-texts. Um, there are two big reasons why I love e-texts. The first and most important one is they're always less expensive for you. Um, we try as hard as we can to keep the costs down that come with this education, and so sometimes we even have free online books that go with different classes. So um, the cost savings is one of the big things that we're trying to help you with. Um, and the other thing is using this add-on that we have now called Read Speaker, which we'll probably get into a little bit later. So I'll not talk about that just yet. But make sure that you plan your reading time. If you're a morning person, that's a great time to do your reading. If you're a night owl, that's also a great time to do your reading. I've had lots of students tell me over the years that I've been teaching that they will use their breaks when they're at work, or their lunchtime breaks at work, or other possible times that they can, even if it's just 20 or 30 minutes, that can be a huge help to you to plan out and do some of your reading. And the great thing about an e-text is, as long as you have your phone, you can do reading for that particular text. The other thing that can be helpful is, sometimes you come across things that you're not sure or it doesn't make sense. By all means, use the available electronic resources that are out there. But the reason why I have Google's wikis and other sources listed here is to just bring a word of caution. So often our first instinct when we don't understand something or we have a question is to Google it or ask Siri or one of those kinds of programs. And I just want to caution everyone that anybody can put something in Google, anybody can put something on a wiki. Almost anybody can post something to the internet. And so always be a little careful about what you read and how reliable it is when you're out surfing the net looking for answers to different questions. Here is Read Speaker. Is it okay if I talk about that now, Kate?
Yeah, go for it. Or I can talk a little bit about it too.
I think, you can chime in too.
Mm-hmm.
Read Speaker is an add-on that LAPU has recently purchased. And so what Read Speaker allows you to do as a student is to have your computer or your mobile device literally read to you any kind of passage. It could be the instructions on an assignment. It could be the chapter in one of your e-textbooks. It could be anything that's connected to your course. Mm-hmm. And it's as easy as clicking on a little icon and letting it know what you want it to read to you. And the best story I have about this, I was talking with one of my students a couple weeks ago. And in Momentum, we read a book that's called Uncommon Gratitude. And it's pretty heavy reading in some points. Especially if somebody is coming from a non-Christian faith background. It can be a little bit heavy reading, and some of it is hard to read. You might have to read something a couple times, but the cool thing that this student told me is she tried Read Speaker while she was driving on her commute back and forth to work. And it let the text be read to her while she was driving. And she said it was a huge help to help her get through all the reading for that particular week's assignments. And so I put that on here to challenge you, just give it a try. It's super easy to use, and it might be super helpful at getting through some of those big blocks of readings that you have to do.
Yeah. If you don't mind me chiming in,
yeah,
that Read Speaker has so many wonderful features. I'm not going to hype it too much because you will get bored and we've got other things to talk about. But um, our goal is to make reading and intaking the information as easy as we can for you. The wonderful thing about Read Speaker is not only will it read things to you, it can also help you adjust the size of the font on things like websites or PDFs that you're reading. You know, if the font is not big enough for you, or if you need, kind of a different format of text to be easier for you to read a lot of material, I really recommend giving Read Speaker a try. You can even have it read to you while it follows along, so you can kind of read and hear it at the same time, which I know is great for me. That's one of my preferred ways of learning information, is both reading and hearing at the same time. So if that sounds appealing to you, this is a feature that is available to all students all the time in our website, students and staff, frankly. I know of some staff members and professors who take advantage of it as well. So just know that that is there and available for you. And if you have any questions about it, your success coach would love to send you some additional information and how to's and walk you through it. But things like that, I think, really help when it is a lot of reading. When we heard in the chat from someone that it can be difficult because it can be reading a lot. And so, just to echo Gordon's tips, I think two things that I really recommend is starting that reading early. Nothing feels worse than logging in on a Sunday and realizing not only do you have an assignment to do, but you have 100 pages of reading to read before you can even get started. It's a terrible feeling. So if you start early and then also get creative, the e-texts have a couple of features like using Read Speaker, having it read aloud to you. You can also search through the texts. Just like you can search through a website or a document, being able to look for keywords or definitions, those things are really wonderful. But the best thing for me about e-texts is that often if you have an e-text and you've got a smartphone, your book is with you all the time, no matter what, sitting in an appointment waiting room, in a car, maybe somebody runs in and grabs the groceries and you sit in the car and get 10 or 15 minutes of reading done. Sometimes those pockets of time for reading really add up over the course of a week. And instead of having to lug around big books or forgetting them or not knowing where they are, an e-text really lets you take advantage of each of those little windows of time.
Awesome. I have to tell you, my favorite part about Read Speaker is adjusting the size of the text, because then I don't have to worry about being blind.
It's great. There's so many good things about Read Speaker. Now we're an infomercial. We got to move on.
But one of the other things I wanted to mention, I'm going for the maximum score every time, or maybe you run out of time and you're not going to go for the maximum score. You're trying to get some points. At least you know where you're going to be able to earn the points if you check the rubrics. Last thing about the discussions is make sure you know what the deadlines are, mainly because at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, the discussion forums close, and it's a hard deadline on Monday. You can't earn points for it being late past Monday at 8 a.m. So make sure that you are aware of what the deadlines are for each of the classes, and you'll be able to not have to suffer any kind of penalties that way. All right, let's shift gears into writing preparation. Any questions so far?
No, but we had a couple people saying that there's some really great tips and that Read Speaker has also been helpful. And we got a couple of people interested in the car as a good listening opportunity. So I think
Awesome.
in agreement. And I just want to say, from our perspective in student success, if you are finding the reading and the writing to be daunting or intimidating or a lot, you are not alone. A lot of our students, it's been a minute since they've had to write a paper or read a lot out of a textbook. And so we just want to encourage you. And I think so far this has been great, but I just want you to know that if that's been hard for you, you are definitely not alone by any means.
For sure, for sure. So probably one of the most important things about your writing assignment is, again, paying attention to the writing instructions. Just like the discussions, I oftentimes will get students who submit a paper and they do a great job addressing the first part of the instructions, but for some reason they've left off the last half or the last fourth or the last 10% of the instructions. And hopefully by me talking about this, everyone sees that all of these things are very interconnected. The assignment matches the rubric so that there's never a surprise on how you earn your points on an assignment or a discussion or anything in the class. We would never want a student to feel surprised, like, how in the world did I get that grade? It doesn't make sense to me, which is why we give you the rubrics right at the beginning of the class. So try to make sure that you, if you need to, print a copy of the instructions or write them down and set them next to you as you're writing the essay. I've found that when I suggest that to students, that is one of the most helpful tips I think that I've given students when it comes to writing assignments, is making sure that the instructions are right beside your computer or your tablet or however you're writing the assignment, but make sure that they're with you so that you can keep referring and asking yourself, did I address that prompt? Did I address that question? And if the answer is yes, 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 you're gonna probably get a really good score. Again, also check the grading rubrics so you know how you're gonna be graded on that particular assignment, so there's no surprise there. Always make sure that you spell check. And if you have, if you're writing your papers in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, you can check the grammar with both of those. We love this app called Grammarly. And the reason we love Grammarly more than anything else is it's free. If you haven't figured it out now, I'm probably one of the most frugal people in the world, and I love free. Especially when it's helpful for my students. You can go to grammarly.com and download the free version of the app. Don't get suckered into their paid for. You don't need all that extra stuff. The free part will work just great for your needs when you're writing papers. The cool thing about Grammarly is once you install it, it runs in the background and gives you little hints when something doesn't sound right or a word is not spelled correctly. It'll even give you suggestions on how you might correct it so that it is correctly spelled or the grammar is in the correct form. I personally have Grammarly on my computer. I've been using it for, gosh, probably 4 or 5 years now. And it checks my emails, it checks everything that I write that's word processed. And it's free, it's easy to use, and it's awesome.
Agreed. I use it too. I use it for work. I use it for home. We love Grammarly. I popped a link to Grammarly in the chat just in case anybody wants to check that out. And we do have a question about grammar. Do you mind taking this one, Gordon?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so the question is, I found out the hard way to not use contractions when writing an academic paper. Is that we're written somewhere, or where do we find that kind of information about the kinds of language we should be using in papers?
Yeah, there is a difference between academic writing and personal writing. So let me give you a couple of examples. One of the things that I see students doing the most frequently, more than contraction issues, is they write the way that they would talk to someone. And they even use slang terms or internet spellings of words. I've had students write the letters BC instead of the word because. And I call that slang internet verbiage. And I think it's just because we've become so used to texting and chatting with our devices that we've forgotten that there's a difference between academic language and regular life language. And so when it comes to academic language, I wouldn't say that you would find it in any syllabus. I think it's kind of just one of those unwritten expectations that if you're going to say that somebody cannot do something, that you would write the word can in a space and not instead of can't. do something. And typically, I think most instructors will point things out like that ahead of time before they start taking away points, but I know that's not always the case. But I would try to avoid contractions in your academic writing. The other thing that I would try to avoid in your academic writing is what I call long run-on sentences that have multiple topics. And so I would say to you, it's better to be concise in your academic writing. It's better to have 3 short sentences that have a single topic than one long flowing sentence that's separated by commas and has 3 separate topics. So, all that to say that, I guess it's part of the process of, learning how to be a good academic writer.
Yeah.
The
Do you mind if so sorry to interrupt, Gordon. I did add in the chat just that there are part of APA style does include some grammar and mechanics guidelines that are helpful as well. So I did chat in the chat an APA style grammar guidelines website from the APA style, the apa.org website that might be helpful. And we've got some other resources in terms of like catching those things that I think we can talk about a little later too. I just want to throw out that often some of that is included in the APA style guidelines as well, which are our standard guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, Christine, that's the actual textbook answer to what you asked in terms of where you might find out that you're supposed to avoid contractions. Because as you go through every class at LAPU, we only use APA style. We do that so that students don't have to get confused by which style this professor is using. Is it MLA? Is it APA? Is it Chicago style? Because there are several different styles. We only use APA, and that's where you would find a rule like that to avoid contractions. Another just quick example is when people are writing and they're using numbers to describe something. I had to read 3 different chapters in this textbook. A lot of times people will use the number 3 when they're typing a paper. And according to APA, you should type out the word THREE for any numbers that are between 1 and 10. Every number over 10, you can use the number. Little obscure things like that, some instructors will ding you, some won't. But I think if you leave this particular webinar with one thing, I would try as best you can to avoid the long run-on sentences. Those seem to be the more prevalent mistake that I see students make with writing. Yeah. Plagiarism is another thing that I just wanted to mention. I'm pretty sure everyone knows that it's not okay to copy stuff from the internet and paste it into your paper and change a couple words here, change a couple words there, and call that okay. When I talk to students, especially in the ISTU class where we have a week that covers plagiarism, I try to make it as basic as possible to help people understand. And what I tell students, what I would tell anyone for that matter, is if what you're writing is the same as an idea that someone else had, it's probably plagiarism. You're trying not to take somebody else's work and retype it and call that your own work. If that's a temptation, if that's a hard thing to do, then I would suggest not Googling things or not going to the internet to look up things, because too often than not, what'll happen is you'll cloud your mind with other people's thoughts so that what you end up writing is not really what you think about something or what you learned about something. So do your best to try to keep your work. And if you do use outside sources, just cite them. it takes a little bit of learning and a little bit of practice to correctly cite things in APA. But I'm telling you, if you try your best to list the author and where that particular information came from, it's very rare that an instructor is going to tell you, oh, you missed a period or a comma there, so that's plagiarism. We just don't do that to students at APU, at LAPU, sorry. Also know the due dates for your written assignments. The good thing about a written assignment is they're typically due on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and a 3-day window starts at 8:01, where you can still submit your work late. You will lose some points, 10% each day if you have to turn in something late. But I always tell students, I would rather you turn in your paper 3 days late at 7:59 in the morning, right before the deadline, than to not turn anything in at all. Even if it's only a half-written paper, you're going to get some points for it. So try your best to do as much as you can, and for sure know the due dates of what you're doing. Lastly, make sure you're familiar with the process of uploading your assignments. I just had a situation a couple weeks ago where the student, I'm teaching ISTU 101, which is Success in the University, introductory course. And a student uploaded her English 101 essay. She thought it was the right essay. I'm sure it's easy to get the icons confused on your computer. Every time, my suggestion is this: every time you upload an assignment, go back to the submission box after and make sure that it's the right assignment. It'll only take you 15 seconds, but you can make sure that the right paper is uploaded. Because if you don't, most instructors will not give you any credit for that if they don't catch it and let you know. Most instructors will say, come on, you're a grown up. You got to make sure you turn in the right assignment. If you've turned in the wrong assignment, it's not on me to let you know that it's the wrong one. So always go back and double check when you upload your assignments.
Yeah.
Guess I didn't fix sorry about that. Last thing I want to talk about is how to review your graded work. It always kind of surprises me how many times a student will ask me this question: why did I only get an 80% on that particular assignment? And my first question is always, did you review the rubric and the comments that I put in your assignment? And I would say at the beginning of most of my courses, when this happens, probably 95% of the time, the students haven't looked at the grading rubric. They haven't looked at the assignment that I send back to them that has all kinds of comments listed in it for, what kinds of things were good, what kinds of things were not good and need to be improved. And so it always kind of makes me wonder how, I think what tends to happen with most students is they go to their grade book and they look at the grade that's there, the score. And if it's a good score, I think sometimes they just move on to the next assignment. And I understand that you're all busy, but what I want to challenge you to do is to go back and open those returned assignments and those returned rubrics, because that's where, as an instructor, we're giving you the feedback and showing you things that you need to improve for the next assignment. And if you don't open those things, you probably are going to keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. If you're listening to me right now and you're not sure how to review your graded work or open those assignments after they've been returned to you, you go right back to the same submission box, the same submission link, and click on it. And typically you will see the box where you can click on the rubric, the grading rubric, And then you'll also see another version of your essay. That's the returned copy that the instructor has sent back to you. Um, if it's at all confusing, once you look at it after we get finished with the webinar, my strongest suggestion is give your success coach a call. They would be more than happy to walk you through it while you're sitting at your computer, and they'll tell you, click here, click there, click over there, and they'll show you exactly how to do it. Your instructor will do that with you too, but it'll probably be easier for you to get that coaching if you're not for sure how to do it. My thing that I wanted to make sure of for the webinar is that you make sure that you look at the completed rubric and your returned assignment, because we put all kinds of feedback and comments in those written assignments so that you understand this is great, you did a great job on this prompt, or this is a great idea, or this is something that you forgot to address, or this is a run-on sentence that you need to make sure that you try to avoid run-on sentences in your next assignment. And then after you've looked at that comment, or all those comments or the score, please, I pray, ask your instructor for clarification if you disagree or if you're unsure. If you're not 100% sure why you've gotten that comment or why you've gotten that score, reach out to your instructor. That's why I'm here. I'm here to make sure that you're learning whatever it is that we're trying to learn in a particular course. So the last thing I would ever want, the last thing any of our instructors would ever want, is for there to be any mystery about why you didn't get a particular score, or what kind of a comment doesn't make sense. Can you help clarify that for me? I love it when students send me a text and say, can you help me with why I got this on this particular assignment? Absolutely, let's look at it together. And I love doing things like that because I know the student is going to get some awesome and meaningful learning out of whatever that conversation is going to be.
Yeah, so great. I will just put a plug in for asking your instructor. One thing that I think is kind and gracious when you're emailing with an instructor is to let them know in your email or your communication, help them know that you did review the rubric. Help by asking specific questions, right? I see I lost points in this category and I'd really love to understand how to do better on that in the future. It just helps your professor know that you're invested, that you're reading their feedback, that you're paying attention and doing your best. I think sometimes when students in haste might shoot off an email or a text that's like, why did I lose points? The professor doesn't know where you are in the process of reviewing that feedback, right? Have you not looked at it? Have you been looking at it and have been poring over it? I think it's just kind to kind of let them know that that you're engaged in reading their emails and reading their rubric feedback as well. That's just good practice.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
there's a question there from Heidi about when an assignment gets submitted for plagiarism. Some of them automatically get reviewed for plagiarism, some of your bigger assignments in a class. And you'll always get feedback with a percentage of how much the system has considered your particular assignment to look like something else, that maybe another essay, it may be content that's out on the web, it could be lots of different places. You're always wanting to see a percentage that's very low, okay? So Heidi, if you got a 0%, that's awesome. That means that everything you've written is 100% your work, and it didn't get flagged for anything that looks like somebody else's work that's out there in the internet world. If you get a paper back and it has, you've had to put references in your essay, it's going to always be more than 0% because you're citing sources and information from your research. So expect to see a percentage of some type if you're citing sources. If you ever see a percentage that's higher than 15 to 20%, that's a time when you want to go back and look at the report from there and find out, okay, why do I have such a high number? Maybe you might have copied some stuff that you didn't mean to copy, or maybe you might have put some citation, some of your research into the paper, but you forgot to cite it. And so that could be a place where you could go back and fix that. But if you're below 15, 20%, you're in a good place.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to run through just a couple of resources. I know we're at time, so if you do need to dip out, we totally understand. We appreciate you joining, but I'm going to kind of run through some resources because I think they're underutilized. The first is tutor.com. I don't think tutor.com gets enough love from students, to be honest. It is a resource that is included in your tuition. You get tutoring minutes. Every student does every single session and semester. There's minutes there for you. And I just want to highlight a few things that I think you might not know about. So we've been talking a lot about writing and things like grammar and sentence structure and professional writing. Tutor.com can help with all of that. And they have a resource where it's like a paper drop off where you will give them your paper at any point in the writing process, beginning, middle, a draft, the end, right before you submit it. And if you give them 24 hours, they'll give back to you a reviewed paper with notes and edits. And man, you can even tell them, hey, I'm worried about my grammar. I'm worried about my APA style. Can you take a look at those in particular? I just think that is so underutilized. We all of us in writing, but especially if you're writing late at night, you know, if you're on a deadline, sometimes always just having someone else read and look at your paper and give you that feedback is so helpful. But if you're also curious about things like professional writing, APA citation, those tutors are there to help, and they can give you that feedback either in live sessions or where you drop the paper off and they email it back to you, which I think is really underutilized. I think it's wonderful. And if you run out of minutes and you want more, you can always talk to your coach. You know, we don't have unlimited minutes, but if you have a real need, we are happy to provide you with more time so that you can get more help in your classes. The next is ReadSpeaker, which we have already waxed poetic about, but I want to mention it again. ReadSpeaker is such a valuable tool. It's available to all of you. Again, these are both free resources, you know, the included resources in your tuition, and we just want to make sure you're utilizing them to the best of your need. The next is the library. We utilize the APU online library, which when Gordon was talking a little bit about Googling answers, right, and getting caught in the internet, the APU library is a huge resource. Two things that I just want to point out. One is access to ebooks and journals and articles. That means that for our students that are writing on the weekends, writing late at night, you can access those library texts at any time. And I just think the timeliness of that is really important. And they're also more rigorous. They're more trustworthy. Resources in those articles and journals and e-textbooks at the APU library are more meaningful resources for you to be citing in your papers. And to Gordon's point, I think oftentimes we maybe are lured by the ease of a Google search, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the definitive or reliable resource. And so we really encourage you to dive into the library. You can chat a librarian. They have librarians on deck to help, which I think is a wonderful resource as well there at the library. Next up is Grammarly, which we talked about, and I did pop the link in the chat earlier. If you want that again, feel free to let me know and I'll pop it in the chat. But I can't just hype it enough. The way that Grammarly helps me feel comfortable and confident when I'm sending those messages about professional issues or academic issues, just that added sense of knowing that I'm being checked, not just for spelling and grammar, but it'll make some mild recommendations about things like contractions, about things like really long sentences, things like that. It'll kind of alert you to tone and things. If you're writing an email and maybe it's a little more, your email's coming across a little more emotionally charged than you might be hoping for. Grammarly will send you little notifications, that kind of alert you to, maybe this isn't as clear as you hope it is. Do you want to reread it? And I just love those prompts for myself. So definitely recommend Grammarly. And the last is, or second to last, is Timely Care. So Timely Care is a counseling resource that is available to our degree seeking students. We are thrilled to be able to offer it. Honestly, we know that um, it's been a really challenging season for all of our students, for all of our staff and faculty as well. And having a counseling resource that's available for you is just such a gift. And we hope that students are utilizing it. It does give you 12 sessions a year of counseling for free. It's included in your tuition as well. So if you have questions about that or are interested, there's information on our website. I'm happy to share the link. But we want you to be supported, not just in your academics, but in all areas of your life holistically. And we think that this is a wonderful resource that we're proud to offer our students. And you know, speaking of holistically, prayer requests. We have a prayer chain here at LAPU where if you have prayer requests and you want to pass them through either your success coach or your professor, they can submit those prayer requests. They can be anonymous if you ask them to remove your name, or they can be, you know, with your name. We can be praying for you by name. We have a wonderful community of prayer warriors that are glad to pray for our students. They're praying for you already generally, but if you have a specific request, we would love to be praying for you specifically because we know you have a lot going on and we want you to be successful and we want you to be cared for and we want to intercede for you in prayer. All right, the last few. These are just the last few things that I think kind of sum up some of what we've been talking about. The first is don't take zeros. You know, when students talk with me about, man, I cannot seem to get ahead in these classes, or I am really struggling, my number one recommendation to them is just don't take a zero. Turn something in. Anything is more than zero, 50%, 30%, 70%. How many points can we get on these assignments? Because really, you know, oftentimes your class is not just each assignment, it's the culmination of all of the points in all of the assignments. And if you have gotten at least partial credit on most of your assignments, you've really got a shot by the end of the session. You know, if you have taken a lot of zeros, you might not be positioning yourself towards the end of the session. And Gordon mentioned it earlier that we know you're not going to be able to give 100% of your time, energy, and attention to each and every assignment. But if you get something, that leaves you the room to invest more when you can give an assignment 100% of your time, energy, and attention. You're just setting yourself up well. So that is my first piece of advice. Don't take a zero. Don't be intimidated. Don't be scared to submit it. Get something submitted and get those points. The second is regularly connect with your success coach. Our success coaches are reaching out all the time, and it's because they care deeply for you. They care about your success. They care about your experience in the class, and they really want to resource you with some of the things that we've been talking about tonight, maybe even more tailored to your situation, to your class, you know, to your textbook options and the e-readers and Read Speaker, all of those things. We just recommend, you know, we know that they call, and even if you can't pick up in that moment, we really encourage you to connect with them. Let them know how you're doing. Let them know how they can be helping you, because that is what they're here for. They really would love to do it. And communicate with your instructor. The name of the game is communication. You know, if you've got issues, if you have things come up in life, which we know, unfortunately, it is likely that you will at some point in the course of your life here as a student, please communicate with your instructor. Let them know what's going on. Ask them questions. Ask them about their weekend. You know, to Gordon's point, staying in communication with them makes it that much easier to reach out for help should you need it. I think sometimes if we don't, the longer we go not emailing an instructor or not reaching out, the harder it is to do it. So I just encourage you, rip the Band-Aid off, connect, say hi, reach out and ask for help so that it's not built up over the whole session of, well, now I haven't emailed them for all these weeks. Doesn't matter. Just email them, say hey, ask for the help and support you need, and communicate what's going on with you in your life. All right, we do also want to let you know that this is going to become a kind of an ongoing series of sorts. There's an upcoming webinar in the fall 2 session about academic writing specifically. And so I just recommend we'll send it out via email and notify everyone in the app again. We just recommend that you take advantage of these because our hope is really that they are helpful, that they get you the resources and help that you need, and that they are an encouragement to you as well. So just shout out to the future webinars as well. And finally, We are here for you, Gordon and myself. This is our contact information, our email addresses, and our phone numbers. We would love to connect. If you have follow-up questions or a resource that you are hopeful for, or you maybe remember we said something in this webinar and you want to follow up with us about that, we would love to have you contact us.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that concludes our formal presentation. We're going to stick around for just a couple of minutes and connect with you in the chat. I see you all, you're so welcome. Thank you for all being here and being wonderful and asking such great questions. Glad it was informative. Blessings to you as well. Thanks for coming. But we're happy to stick around for a few more minutes and answer questions in the chat. It's a lot of information, so feel free to reach out to your coach as well if you have follow-ups or if something I said maybe it's made you curious, you want to ask more, they'd be happy to help. Your professor would be happy to help. So glad. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Lawrence. I know it was a lot, it was a packed hour, huh? An hour and 10 maybe. Our bad. We're chatty people, me and Gordon. Sorry for that, but we hope it was helpful, Lawrence. Thanks for coming. Yeah, and I think you'll be sent a recording of this webinar once we conclude and everything is finalized. So you can go ahead and review it later, like Gordon said, if you want to check anything out. All right. Have a lovely evening. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the webinar for now, but have a wonderful evening, everybody. All the best.
Bye.